GM Farcaster. Oops, it is Monday, August 19th, and you are here with Nounish Prof and Adrienne for 29 minutes of Farcaster news to start your day. And we have a very special guest. We have Murtaza Hussein, who is here with us to chat about all things Farcaster. And also, we're going to do a little mini interview and chat with him about his recent foray into Farcaster and sort of what he likes about it and why he, why he ended up here. We're really glad you're here. So welcome, Murtaza. It's so great to see you.
Oh, thank
How
you
are you
both
this morning?
for having me. Great. Got nice and early to come on GM Farcaster.
We are so happy to have you here. We're going to start with our usual shenanigans with a few news items, and we're going to have you jump in and chat about them as well. So first up, let's talk about, whoops, that is not where I wanted to start. I wanted to start here, Warpcast experiment, X posting. This is from V. A few users who were active on X but not on Farcaster were invited to cross-post. We want to see if cross-posting makes them more likely to engage with Farcaster beyond the cross-post. If that happens, we'll roll it out more broadly. If it doesn't, we may pause. And this was from Dan. Related to it, everyone opted in. For what it's worth, a consistent piece of feedback from people with large audiences on Twitter, but were early to Farcaster because I knew them. Farcaster is great, but I forget to post there. So this is an experiment to syndicate their content to Farcaster. May take some time for people to start responding, but certainly the next time they open the app, they will have a full notifications feed and hopefully some thoughtful content. If casts with no chance of reply is how you're viewing this, i.e. it's a negative, just don't follow an account, or if you're seeing recast, mute them. The pragmatic view, still a higher chance that an account replies to you on Farcaster than on Twitter. That's just reality. So one of the folks that I've seen who obviously is part of this experiment is Mark Andreessen. And I've seen like in his casts, they've just been directly recasts of what he's posting on Twitter. So I think that's some of the pushback. How are you seeing this experiment? What do you think, Adrienne or Murtaza, either one who want to jump in here?
You go ahead first.
Well, are they actually, is it a copy of the same thing they're posting on Twitter, or
Yes.
is it the actual Twitter link?
It's like, what they're posting on Twitter. Yeah.
But it looks like it's a Farcaster post?
It looks like a Farcaster post. I saw a lot of
Twitter. Oh, then go for it. I love it.
They are actually posting on Twitter the exact same thing. It's that when you look at Mark Andreessen's, for example, he's retweeting a lot. So you're seeing the link to the retweet that he's doing on Twitter. And then occasionally, if he does an actual tweet, you'll see whatever he's tweeting. So that's a good example if you're not sure what I'm talking about.
Got it. And that's why people were complaining about. That's why all of a sudden what I saw were people talking about people posting Twitter content.
It's just Twitter links. Yeah, it looks kind of like Twitter links sometimes if they're retweeting. Okay. Yeah. So what do you love about it? Why do you think it's a good idea?
Also, it's X now, not Twitter. I don't know if you got that memo, and I know you.
I will never, ever call it X. I'm just going to tell you right now, Leland. There is nothing. You're going to have to pay me a lot of money to call it X. I'll just put it that way. I'm not doing it. I'd still call it the Boston Garden if that helps.
We only get paid on.
It hasn't been the Boston Garden for decades. You want to pay me? I'll call it X. But anyway, what do you? Yeah. So look, what do you think? Do you think we're getting a good experiment here, or?
Yeah, there's very little downside. So we need more interesting content. If people are posting other places, let them also post on Farcaster. I think to Dan's point, if you don't like it, guess what? You can unfollow, you can mute. So it seems like a very safe to fail experiment. And I do think, I think it's good.
What do you think, Murtaza? Is the experiment worth it? Do you think if, should we be trying to attract these really large Twitter folks over here? And is this a good way to do it?
Yeah, no, I think that to Adrienne's point that there's no cost to it and it's harmless kind of to try it out. So I think try it out and see if it works well. The way I personally do it, because I still use Twitter or X or whatever, but 'cause I can't really abandon it because I've built 12 years of posting there and I have a really big following. I know a lot of people on it. But I like to post on Warpcast too, so I just kind of treat them as two separate tabs. So I would, and also I think that the audience in Warpcast is different. So you would say it's a different character and tenor of the whole platform, how it is. So I kind of don't do that. I don't post the same things on X and Warpcast or repost them, generally speaking, because I just feel that the audience is different. So just tailor it a bit that way. But I think that the best way to get people to do it, hopefully, it's treated like that. Like treat it like it's two different rooms of the same app or a similar app because the user experience is so similar. So I think that reposting is good, and because there's no cost doing it to try and see how it works. But my own way of doing it is just to try to just I don't know. He treated it as two different things that you're going to post on both, but with an eye to a different audience. So I think that's not hard to encourage people to do that too as well. But I think seeing how people post it, it could be really good. And then, getting those people on, like posting the people with big followings, getting them used to having your stuff on Farcaster. If they start getting a big following comparable to Twitter on Farcaster, then they'll just be naturally inclined to post more. So it's definitely worth a shot.
Yeah, and I agree with Jeff here. I agree with the point that recycled content is less than ideal. Content should be platform protocol specific. Basically, what you're saying is vibes are different. I agree with that totally, because I do not post the same. And I think I did in the beginning. I think I very much did, post in both places, but I definitely shifted, and I find myself rarely posting on Twitter now, but when I do, it is usually something different. It's not necessarily the same. Except for the show. The show is on Twitter right now. Hi, Twitter. How you doing? I am still calling you Twitter. Hi, Elon. So yeah, and this was interesting also. This is from Xmon. Cross-posting Farcaster versus Twitter thread. See above some pain points, maybe justified from Twitter, brain-rotted people like myself. So this was a whole conversation that was happening over on the Bird app. And yes, I'll still call it the Bird app too. Between a few folks who are, pretty well known within crypto Twitter. And it was really about why it started with Horsefacts talking about why are you not casting on Farcaster? And then people kind of saying, oh, I don't really get it. I don't know how to do this right. So there was a whole big, really, really good conversation back and forth about why do this. And then I liked Luciano's takes here. Because he was replying to Andy 8052, what makes it worth it for you compared to Twitter? And his comments were higher quality network, higher quality conversation, far less noise, very reminiscent of pre-2014 Twitter. Basically, Farcaster for insight conversation, Twitter for distribution. And I felt like that was a really great point, because that's kind of, if I need to broadcast broadly, I'm probably going to use Twitter. If I want to have a conversation and actually engage in a social network, I'm going to focus more on Warpcast. And I think that's probably a good rule of thumb and what I'm seeing. So, Murtaza, even though you have a very big Twitter following, you're, been very active in there for a while, you really have dove in really into the Farcaster ecosystem. And I appreciate that. And so what first brought you over to Farcaster, and what has made you stay, I guess, is a good question that might be helpful to others.
Yeah, it's funny because someone was commenting, Jeff Goldberg, who I think people on Farcaster know, he's like very comments about the platform quite a bit. So I know him for many, many years professionally because I'm a reporter, and I would draw upon his firm's analysis for some stories that I was doing, which relate to social media manipulation, usually by states. And then a couple of years ago, he was threatened by somebody, and his life was in danger somewhat. So I wrote a story about him for that, and it was a very stressful time for him and so forth. But we kind of kept in touch. So a month or so ago, I was reading another story, and I was like, oh, I should call Jeff to get his take on this. And then we reconnected, and he's like, can you please check out this thing Farcaster, like a Warpcast, like this thing that's going on. Really, we're trying to make it big, and just you want to get different people, non-crypto people, and using it. And I've always said no to using any other social media. I never used Blue Sky. I never used Mastodon or whatever it's called. I just feel that I've already been locked into Twitter, and I have no reason to use those. It just seem the same to be the same as Twitter. But he was like, look, there's like a crypto component to it too. And I'm actually interested in crypto, unlike a lot of people in my field, I guess, but I find it very fascinating. But yeah, so I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. So then I posted a little bit, and then I got such a nice response from people. People were so welcoming, and everyone was saying, GM and welcome and so forth, and that was kind of nice. And then they were sending me all these things like, what's ham and what's degen? I have no idea. No one explains what this means. I have no idea what this means. But I was like, okay, this is like something is going on here, which is interesting. So I was like, okay, well, I'm getting tipped in like cryptocurrency. I was like, and at the same time, getting all these followers and all this like very, warm, non-hostile environment, because Twitter has become extremely hostile. It's very it's not like, I don't know how to describe it. It's very, very strange. But people were kind of nice and normal. So I was like, oh, this is a very positive vibe here. And because of the, I'm interested in like protocols and blockchain and so forth. I find it very fascinating. And using the internet as a means of like trying to build like a better platforms which have some sort of exchange of value and things like that. So I was like, well, okay, I'm accumulating all this cryptocurrency. I'm meeting all these people who are nice, and you're developing a warm relationship with them through like these exchanges. So I was like, well, yeah, I can tell my wife I'm working actually when I'm posting on Warpcast. Actually, I'm supposed to stop getting off Twitter, wasting time. It's a joke. But, basically it's like that. So those two aspects of it. It's definitely like, it's nice to be able to have a social platform where everyone is kind of, civil a little bit. And maybe when it grows or as it grows, that may change a little bit. But I think that it has a very good initial culture. And then if you can have a platform where there's a gamification aspect of it, where your content, if it's good and people like it, you kind of compensate for it in a way too. That's really preferable to being on Twitter or being on Facebook or something, because then you're kind of like a sharecropper, and all your content is benefiting only the platform or the corporation, but you can own the benefits of it much more so here, which I think is a much more healthier, a better form of social media to have it structured. So all those things, it's only been like a month and a half. Like who knows what can happen, but like so far,
wow, it seems so much longer. I feel like you've been here forever. It's real, and that's a great thing. I mean that in the best way. Like that. I feel like you're really.
It must have been the first week of July, because it was around 4th of July at that time. So that's why I started doing it. So like a month and like a week, or a month and 2 weeks, or something like that. So yeah, but it feels like a longer time, and it feels that I already feel like I'm kind of locked in, because you have so much. You develop relationships, and then you have a bit of a following, and then you feel like it'd be bad to abandon my followers or abandon that. That's how it happened with Twitter with me originally. I had like 1,000 followers. I was like, well, I can't. What would happen to these people to starve if I did not keep doing? So I have to keep doing it. So yeah, now I feel like I'm kind of into it, and it's just cool too, seeing people build, iterate new things. Also because there's no introduction manual or anything, I have to kind of figure out what's going on. But as far as I understand, people can iterate and build new things onto it because it's open source. So people are developing new ways to interact. So that keeps it always interesting and new in a way as well too. So that's my thought about so far. And I don't know, like I don't know what the goal is exactly for the platform. If they want to build like a full news kind of like capacity for it, or expand the whole ambit of topics beyond just the ones that are focusing today, which are more tech based, then I think it's very doable and possible, because the UX is not intimidating at all for people who use Twitter. It's very very naturally intuitive. And I even told some people about it for Warpcast. I was like telling people you should get on this, to give it a shot and try it out. And people, I could keep pushing about it, but I'll wait till people are ready to onboard, or when the platform is ready, and so forth. But I think it's definitely something that is definitely plausible, and I certainly enjoy it. I think it's nice, and the people are much less cynical. And yeah, I could talk a bit more about it, but I feel that it very much has the capacity to be a big social media platform, in my opinion.
so much, Murtaza.
Yeah.
The way you describe that experience is so similar to, I think, a lot of our experiences coming in. When you say there's no instruction manual, I always think, like, is that a feature or a bug? Because when there's no instruction manual, it's a little bit of almost a gatekeep of, if you can come in and be earnest and be willing to ask questions and kind of figure things out and be comfortable when things aren't totally clear and give people the benefit of the doubt, I think it's a good way of getting in. I don't think that scales. I think it probably should be a little easier to onboard. But I love just the way you described it, because I kind of feel like that it's kind of hard to quantify, but there is like an earnest culture that you were able to kind of pick up on right away.
It's a good way of putting it. It's a very earnest culture. And, I guess it would be hard to make an instruction manual because it keeps changing, because they keep building a new thing onto it and so forth. But yeah, I think the basics, you could get people a little bit acclimated to it. Well, you don't have to use all those functions. You can just say that, I'm just going to post and cast, and these are the channels, and that's pretty easy for anyone who uses Twitter. But I was just wondering, what is like ham? Like, what does it mean someone gave me 300 ham? Like, I still don't fully know, to be honest, but I kind of understand a little bit more now.
Neither do we.
It's
another token. There's always something popping up, and you have to kind of just roll with it.
Yeah. And for me, I am a little bit acclimated to crypto and blockchain, just not because of my job, just because it's like a hobby, like I find it interesting. So for me, I was more incentivized to figure out what it means and try to, connect all the things together. But not everyone is there at that point at the moment. But you could just kind of, that could be a way of onboarding them into the whole thing, because it fits in very naturally.
And I think the other thing is, hey, Adrienne, he thinks maybe a class might be useful, maybe something to help people walk through.
Yes.
We're putting one together.
Very soon GM, for both. Yeah, we're working on a Farcaster onboarding class. All right, we'll send you the registration link.
We'll let you know. Yeah, it's coming soon. And then there will be recordings that'll be available too. So yeah, we're actually in the process of working on that. So that's very soon. But it's a great point, because there is no instruction manual. It does, like, early on, it kind of, I think, does help filter a little bit. So you do get
one thing I will say,
quality.
When it started, a lot of people de-seed me. They de-seed me saying, hey, if you want to chat, I can help you just get acclimated, not wanting anything in return, just to out of like a generous spirit, which is really nice. It exemplifies the culture, which is very collaborative and friendly and so forth. I don't think anyone ever DM'd me on Twitter saying, hey, if you need help with Twitter, let me know. It's not really the culture of it, but they did that, which is quite nice.
I think it relates to this. Farcaster has less price chatter because the user base is a higher percentage builder creator than CT. It's a high agency mindset. And I thought that's a great point, and kind of relates to this of when you have that, people here for different reasons, and you do have a lot of builders and you do have a lot of creators, and it changes sort of the conversation, where nobody's here just looking for the car wreck. Where on Twitter, that's often what's happening, is that you're looking for the entertainment value. You're looking, the negativity is more a part of the conversation. This was also from Dan, that it was a similar to this discussion. It's not hard to be intellectually honest and negative. Negativity also performs better than optimism on social media. Much harder to be intellectually honest and optimistic with bias for action, willingness to fail, learn, ability to find the appropriate amount of signal in all the feedback, then discard the remaining noise, and most importantly, not quitting. So for those who do stick around, I feel like you get a much more positive than other social platforms. But also sometimes that's not what people are looking for, right? They're just looking for entertainment. They're not looking for deep conversations about, Plato, which literally happens all the time. On Warpcast. And it's very hard to find on Twitter. No,
there are a lot of very smart people on Warpcast, even the people who focus on tech, who just know about these things. But I really like what Dan casted there, actually, because there's kind of like a balance you have to have between self-criticism or critical sense and optimism. And I think the optimism always has to be at least a little bit more. Otherwise, it's very deflating. If it's just very negative, you're just gonna you're demotivated and so forth. But if you're not self-critical, then you become vulnerable to all these shortcomings and so forth. So that's also not good to not have that aspect as well too. But you always have to have the gears just aligned in the right way. So what he described is very right. And unfortunately, the bias of human beings is to spread negative news more. It's like an evolutionary thing. Like negative news is very, could be dangerous, could be important. You have to spread more. So that tends to go more viral on social media. And then the morale of people using it becomes very low accordingly. So how do you maintain a self-critical and a critical perspective, but also keeping an optimistic perspective? Can you scale that in a huge group of people? I don't know. It's more like a sociology question, but I think you can certainly try, and you can try to, certainly in a smaller community as you're building it up, to implant that idea first. And I actually think that in Warpcast, going back to what I said originally, it's kind of well geared to that because of the fact that you can use it to do other things, just talk. You can do exchange. You can sort of, if you're doing well at it, you can accumulate things, just people's goodwill. And then that makes people more optimistic. So I think it changes the vibe a little bit potentially to have, I don't know. And on Twitter, everyone thinks they're going to die on Twitter the next day. So, like, if you look at every single tweet initially, it looks like this tweet is like telling me the world's about to end. And that's kind of like, just like you can experiment and read these tweets. They're kind of like very interesting. But on Warpcast, I think it's different.
Or right now in 2024, it's the world's going to end if you don't vote for my candidate. If you vote for that other candidate, the world is absolutely going to end.
Yeah, and you get so burned out.
November, whatever. Yeah.
I think everyone has like 4 elections in them, and at that point they start burning out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it's a very good point that he made, and I think that's something that can build into the culture.
Yeah, I think that the builder culture has definitely helped. I think the conversations that go a little deeper help to frame the culture. And you had and I couldn't bring it up just because I'm having some issues. Having so many issues this morning. But there was a post that you did about reading and reading books, and that kind of spurred some good conversation around that. But like that, I thought was a bigger conversation than it actually became, because I see this with my kid. I see this with myself. I read a lot less than I used to. A lot less. I used to read a ton. And I mean, like back into when I was in law school, I would still read a lot for pleasure. And I think it's because I was in such a reading mode. And I think we get separated from that, and it's hard to get back in. And that all ties to me to critical thinking. And it's the thing that I see in students that is severely lacking. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge moving forward, especially with AI, that people who lack critical thinking skills are going to be in big trouble. If you can't discern what's AI, what's not, what's happening, just reality. So I think it's going to twist a lot of things around. And I think we're heading for an interesting end of the world. Just kidding. Just interesting times ahead. On Twitter, that would mean the end of the world. But I just mean, but it is, I think what I do see on Warpcast is a lot more critical thinking. And I think that's what's important.
Totally. And I think that the message lengths are optimized to something which is not just a soundbite, but also not such, there's enough scarcity of space that you have to be somewhat concise and somewhat targeted and think about what you're saying. Whereas I think that X or Twitter, we give people unlimited space, they kind of like lose track of the argument. I've never read a super long tweet before. Like the really long ones, I've never read one. I don't know anyone's.
Murtaza.
Yeah, I don't think anyone reads those. Yeah.
We had like a month where all we did was talk about long casting.
You just got right into her heart.
In a good way, yeah.
I don't know how. First of all, a long piece of text usually needs an editor. And I took years of writing to know how important editors are. An unedited long ramble is like this unreadable. And, it's not good for the writer or me. So I don't think anyone reads them. But because of suppression of links, too, I can't find news on Twitter anymore. It's very difficult to find news. I can't find sources. I can't report things anymore. So I don't know if the usership's gone up or not, but certainly the quality of the content has gone significantly down, just in a practical, useful standpoint. So, another platform could emerge, or on multiple platforms or something, to fill some of those tasks. But yeah, I don't know. That's speculative, but I think it's very possible. But
yeah. Well, you're speaking my love language right now, and I know you're just getting into read, write, own.
Yeah, it's great.
Chris Dixon's book.
Very good.
I think a lot of the concepts
So
he's
good.
writing you'll already be familiar with because you've covered crypto and blockchain and you're living it. He does kind of articulate it in a way once you've been through it, it makes it a lot clearer. At least it did for me.
Yeah.
I was like obsessed with Twitter, changed my life. I've written about this. I got so much value from it until I didn't. And then what do you do? Like there's nowhere to go because of lock-in and network effects. So that is kind of the reason why I became so bullish and dedicated to kind of making Farcaster succeed. It's easy to be like, this place sucks because it's not perfect yet. But I wanted to succeed. I have there's a lot of conversation about why there's only kind of one core client, which is Warpcast, and why there should be, a healthy protocol should have dozens, if not hundreds of applications on top of it. Or at least more than one, 3 to 5 at minimum. I have this kind of feeling where at least for now, I'm kind of okay if it's just Warpcast because it's built on blockchain, because I own my identity, there is protection. So when Farcaster or when Warpcast takes its evil arc, which it will, I mean, we all like it has to, when you extract so much value, that you have an out, like that there's an exit, that there's another way to build something else. Like imagine, like Elon doesn't really have to listen to everybody because it's a privately owned company and he's, head product manager, because people can't leave.
Yeah, right.
You just don't have the same power.
Also, this is actually because I don't really understand this entirely. So Farcaster is a protocol, and then you own your social graph, and even they can like ban you from it, or if you don't like it, you can take that graph with you somewhere else. So that's great. That's great. I suspected as such, but that's a greater incentive
so there's,
to keep moving there.
There's multiple clients, but just they're not as popular. So Supercast is one. And if you go over to Supercast, you'll see a different feed because it's unfiltered. It's, anyone who may have been blocked, it might be a little extra spammy because anyone who's been blocked for spam may not show up on Warpcast, may show up there for you. So depending on who you follow and things like that. So we already have that. And we have there's a few other clients as well that have different ways of approaching the content. So you're going to get a different experience. But the plus side is you take all your followers with you over there. You take all your content with you, attached with your FID. Great. So so for example, I was thinking about this when Jeff got, I think this is what attracted Jeff to Farcaster as well, was when you're deplatformed somewhere, right? If you're deplatformed on Twitter, you don't necessarily have a great substitute. It's not the same. You lose your followers, all those things. If that happens on Warpcast, you just, hey, I'm over on Supercast now. That's it.
But
like you're still there.
Yeah. Well, we should plug, V wrote a blog post, Varun, who's co-founder of Farcaster and CTO of Warpcast. Markle, he wrote a blog post early on. It's called Sufficiently Decentralized Social Network. I really should read it because he describes the vision for it. And he defines sufficiently decentralized as if two people on the network want to communicate, but the rest of the network doesn't want them to, they still can. So it doesn't mean, he doesn't say you can't be deplatformed. He doesn't say you have a right to an audience. It just means that you're able to communicate if you want to.
That's super interesting. I should definitely read that. And to Adrienne, to your point, reading Read Write Own is actually great for me now because sometimes you get self-doubt about like the crypto was like a big like Dogecoin something. Like no, it's really significant technological change. And Twitter also changed my life. Whatever negative comments I have about today, it definitely transformative, positive effect on my life. So I would like to see that whole dynamic continue. I like the internet. I like the ideology behind trying to make it freer and live up to its potential. So this is great. Like to have it build something else, it's very promising, I would say at least. So yeah, I should definitely read this. And I'll look it up right there. Also on his
we'll drop it in our show notes, and we'll send you a link to it directly so you have it.
Yeah. And last point of distinction. I'm sorry, and just Murtaza, last point of distinction is your identity, like your identity is on chain. It's on Optimism, which is, super chain on Ethereum, but your casts are not. Your following graph, that's all on something called hubs, that's the Farcaster protocol. So the Farcaster protocol contains your social graph and your cast content. Your identity is on chain, so people can't. So you own that.
Oh, you own that. That's really good. Because if you get blocked from Twitter, it's game over. Actually, there's not really much you can do if you built everything on Twitter, which I have actually, which was a mistake. But.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean many such cases.
Yeah.
Many such cases, and I don't think there until there is one, right? Until you get deplatformed, until something happens. Until you no longer like the person running the platform, whatever it is. And then you're like, why did I do that? But I think that this solves a big problem, but a lot of people don't see it as a problem until it is for them. So
I think people don't understand.
It's a hard selling point.
People don't understand the substructure of the internet. They don't understand. They're just using the thing. They don't understand there's a corporate choke point. They don't understand what a protocol is. And I myself, among those people, didn't understand many, many years ago, and only kind of trying to look into it myself and reading about it and so forth. They kind of get it. Now, when you get it, you're like, oh, I should build on a protocol. I definitely should do that because what's going to happen. But Gen Z might just open Warpcast account instead of X. That could be, a good move for them.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. I've got a few
busy over on TikTok right now, but let's see.
I have a few Gen Zs as roommates, and I've been trying to get them on Warpcast, and they won't.
Your roommates.
We'll build some good memes and good conversations on Warpcast, and they'll want to be part of it. That's kind of like the way to get them.
Yeah, I haven't gotten my roommate to dive in yet. Be my child, my 16-year-old child. I do want to share this question from Jeff, and let me read it in case for those who are just listening. Question from Murtaza. Most of media is anti-crypto, not even social media. Nathaniel Hopper, New York Times, for example, basically spent years working on convincing his peers at the New York Times that crypto was worth covering. The question is, do you feel there are many other crypto-friendly, crypto-curious journalists out there?
Yeah, there definitely are. And they're also, the majority, I would say, are crypto indifferent. They're just kind of agnostic about it. But they need to use social media for work. So I think the majority, I would say, fall in that category. They're just not really thinking about it and indifferent either way. But if they saw something was working, which was using it, they would not be averse to that. It's just not really something like that. I will say when you have like a bunch of people, like I'm just one person. If you have like 1,000 people who are journalists or people who job is to think critically about various subjects. I don't cover tech. I cover more foreign affairs and conflict and so forth. But those people will ask critical questions. They'll ask critical questions. They'll ask questions of people who use the platform. If they're like people who are powerful and influential and stuff like that, they're going to ask very tough questions. But that's like part of society. It's like just having society on the platform will inevitably entail that. And they'll ask questions about crypto. But the thing is, if the protocol works and it offers those benefits, it's kind of an irrefutable argument unto itself. That's a reason to use it and so forth. So, the people who would be averse to it just because of the crypto component, I think are quite small. I think it's mostly people who, there's a small minority of people, I would say, who like me who are actively interested and find it fascinating and so forth. I think there's maybe 85% who would just let me post and then, I don't know anything about this, but if you give me some crypto or if it works, something like that, that's great. Not a problem. And there's like another smaller percentage, maybe 10% of people who are like turned off by it, not because of the technology, because of the gauche sort of financialization, which has become the major face of what crypto is to most people. But in the book, the casino, what Chris Dixon said, the casino versus the computer, the casino thing is turn people off. And if I didn't know about technology, I'd be turned off by it. But if I had not learned about the technological aspect next to it, then I would have written it off. But no, I do see the value behind it, or at least the potential behind it in that sense. So I think generally speaking, it's not really a problem at all. I think the main problem, as with any social network, is the initial network effect. Why am I posting when there's no one there, when I have a huge audience on Twitter? But I think that Warpcast does kind of get around that a little bit by the welcoming and warm community, like the very like ostentatiously welcoming community, which is really, really great positive feedback when you join. And secondly, the financialization component, which builds in organically into it. Because, I would say that I've casted this before, but there's a very big differential between the tech world and like the analyst and journalist world, whereas the former has a tremendous amount of comparatively resources financially. The latter has very little. It's kind of always looking for ways to augment what they do. So if you can like make a little, like Elon Musk pays people who have blue checks to post a little bit to generate content. It's very minimal. It's like literally like coffee in the morning, once a month, something like that. Whereas, if you can generate a reasonable, steady stream, not even a lot of money, but something from using Warpcast, they will 100% post their content on Warpcast instead of Twitter, because at least I'm getting something out of it. And I have to promote my work anyways. I have to network anyways. So if I can turn that into a small stream of regular income, which can fund further work, there's no doubt about it. The logic all makes sense for that. Other things too, channels and things like that, which Warpcast has, which Twitter does not. And Twitter's really suffering for not having that now because it's become so chaotic. I would be like, how could you not have a social media with channels now? I feel that's actually, I think that once you use it, it's far superior. So those things, it's just a question of getting people on. And I would say that if you get like 3 people on, just to test it out for a few months, get them acclimated to it, get them like the way I'm into it now, then you can ramp up, and then you can have 10 people, then you can have 20 people. And then slowly, you'll have a venue where conversations are happening, where others want to gravitate towards. And another thing I would say, to Jeff's point, is I wouldn't get New York Times journalists. I wouldn't get Washington Post journalists to come on, because those people, they may be more, a lot of them are really great. They're really nice, but they may be more pretentious, or they may be more, I don't know. It's just a little different. You want to get the high to mid category of people, and on the lower category as well too. The people who make up the bulk of the, discourse, you could say, get those people on, and then the big top people will come later, like the CNN, Anderson Cooper, or whatever, will come later, because they want to be where the conversation is. And that's how Twitter got going. It wasn't that journalists started using it who were very famous. It's that a very critical mass of people who are news consumers and producers in the mid tier started using it. And then everyone was like, I can't miss this conversation. I have to be there for that. So I think it's absolutely replicable, if not to the full extent of X or Twitter, to still a significant degree. And I think it's just about talking to people who are in those categories, and getting them to use it, and incentivizing them a little bit, and tell them they can ask questions about crypto and get crypto moxie. No, honestly, I'm making like cryptocurrency from posting on social media, and she's like, yeah, sure you are. But I was like, no, actually I have a look. And then she's like, whatever, like if it's working, do it. That's a really important thing, actually. And it sounds frivolous, and sounds like it's a gamification of it and so forth, but I think it's not, actually, because it's a very big wake-up call that things you do in the online world are real. They're not real. It's not like a video game. And when you're doing something successfully there, and it's having even like a small to medium benefit in your material life, in terms of something quantifiable, like revenue from it, that's a big wake-up call. That's like a thing that this is real. This is something you should take seriously, and it can scale, and it can also have implications on your relationships and so forth. So that that's like the essence of what I think the promise of a blockchain internet could and should be. That type of thing. It kind of feels like the metaverse is real. Like if you're earning money in the metaverse, then you're doing work there, then it's real. So I think that's a really promising wake-up call. For me, that was like this is a real moment when I was using it. So
I think that there's 2 things there too. So one, your audience can also earn crypto, earn moxie, for example, just by following you and interacting with you without you doing anything. You don't have to even give it to them. Like, they are just earning it. So that's a new gamification, if you will. Plus and minus, and we've talked about that with the spam and things like that. But there's incentive for people to interact and to pay attention and to read what you're writing, which I think is always, helpful. And then the other thing is, and I think you're seeing this now, is if you're early, and right now a lot of areas are early, like a lot of topics haven't been put into a channel. Nobody's really talking about them, whatever it is. So your area of expertise, and this is, particular, we're talking about journalists right now, but it could be anybody, any kind of area of expertise. If you bring that to Warpcast right now and to Farcaster, you're going to own that space for at least a moment in time until someone else comes in, and then you become that leading expert in that area. So I just recently saw Afro Chick, Naomi, has been casting fitness videos. We see those everywhere else, right? Any channel, you go onto Instagram, there's a zillion of them. There's nobody doing that on Warpcast. So she's kind of owning that moment right now because no one else is doing it. And I see that over and over again. So like for global news and for geopolitics right now, you can own that space because there's no one else who's already doing it. There's a lot less noise. There's a lot less competition. And I think that's really cool to be able to see that.
It's a great incentive to start using it like sooner than later. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard the digital frontier analogy?
No, but I would love to hear it.
So, well, just think about like back before the world was discovered fully. And who were the people that were brave enough to go push the frontier? Literally risking their lives, right? But to go push and kind of settle and how much opportunity they got for it. So pretty much the world has been discovered and there's not really frontiers in the world to explore, but you have these digital frontiers and kind of Warpcast being one. So if you're willing to kind of go places where people aren't and explore and create, you can kind of stake out a home in a place and kind of capture opportunities that other people aren't doing because
it's like buying a real estate in Manhattan in 1800s. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Manhattan,
the Oregon Trail. Yeah. Exactly.
So,
yeah, but there's definitely
there's kind of infinite digital frontiers.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree with both you guys. And like being at the if people build a good community and you help shape it at the beginning, you can kind of shape the characteristics of it a little bit too. And it's kind of good because I don't know how Twitter became so hostile and so like it's like a war zone. Probably it was not intentionally curated. There was not intentional culture created. It just kind of exploded on its own, which is fine. But if you can intentionally incentivize and encourage a somewhat constructive culture, and I think the Moxie thing you mentioned too is like kind of creates positive sum relationships between people. Not everything's zero sum.
Yeah.
If there's something which makes it positive sum, keep iterating that again and again. You could have a very healthy culture. So I think it's something that has the potential. So I'm going to keep playing around with it and see what happens. But
great.
Everyone's been super nice, which has been a lot easier. Yeah.
We had one other comment here from Jeff. Murtaza recently used the phrase "news influencers" with me, and it really resonated. Do you want to? What do you mean by news influencers?
This is conflict between the tech world and the media world. I think that we have to differentiate some things too, because I think there's like some group of elites and another group of elites who don't like each other, and that's become like a big dinner party fight. I think what you want to talk about is you want to talk about people who are interested in the news, who know how to create news, who have professional standards, but who are ideologically open-minded. And that's a predominant number of people, in my opinion. Most people are like that, I would say, in my world, I would say. So how to get those people and then sidestep this sort of like intra-elite argument and so forth. You get those people, and those people are not, they just need a venue to promote their work, whatever else it is, to get people to see the information, to connect with people who share that information as well too. I did not go to journalism school. I didn't study anything to really journalism. I got into journalism by accident. I just happened to be in Egypt at the time of the Arab Spring, and I was just tweeting and posting on my blog, and then somehow I became a journalist. So I never was trying to do that, and so I was a news influencer basically. And then I learned how to do the professional skills later on, how to, format it and investigate and things like that. That took some time, but there are a lot of people like that, and they're just looking for people who somewhere to share information and connect with others, and they're interested in the news as a broad category of things. So you just focus on that category, and those people need help. They need a platform. They need ways to generate revenue for their work. That's a lot of people, and then you can build like a community like that, and then it'll scale. And then the people who are institutions will want to connect with those people because they rely on them for information, they rely on them for an audience and so forth. So I would focus on people like that to get them on if you were trying to scale like a news type thing on Warpcast or Farcaster. So yeah, and I think it's very doable. I think it's not doable at all because people are very dissatisfied in that world with Twitter because it's been because of the suppression of links, and then
I was just going to say that's what I was thinking of too. With if you're trying to get your writing out there, your writing lives somewhere else usually.
It doesn't get out there anymore.
And the links being suppressed definitely throws you off, and you don't have that issue on Farcaster, which is great. It's not suppressed. You can show the actual link if you want, or if you don't want it embedded, all those things. So
I think the suppression of links has made it so hard for anyone who's starting out, because I got to get my name out there when I had no platform on Twitter, and it was great because it was just an equal playing field. But now the suppression is such that if you're already in, you're in. Then if you're not, then you're not. And they want people instead to post these super long tweets, but that's not really the same thing as an article. It's like just doesn't the medium does not comport to doing that effectively. So it's tough. How do you get out there now if you're just starting out from scratch? Like I don't know, but it could be like that.
I have to laugh because seriously, this is all that Adrienne's been preaching for so long about the long.
Well, it's like don't take the web. Yeah. Don't take the web out of the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
I don't want a single platform. That is not the vision of the interwebs.
No.
And I like links, and I like lots of I don't need one person. I don't want an everything app.
It's
I want an everything protocol.
Exactly. I want an everything protocol. It's funny. I used to go to Twitter to get the news. Like where do I find the news every morning? I'll just check Twitter. Yeah. But now I don't find any news there. I just find people rambling, and I have to actually go back to the New York Times website, which I never hadn't done in 10 years. I hadn't checked it on a regular basis. I need someone to structure the news for me in some way. Like it, because they've destroyed the curation that used to exist of all these different, sources. So and it's been such a win.
I think you're right too. Because a lot of times I would just go to trending, and most of the time it would be the top news of the day, and now it's just mostly what are people fighting about today.
What are people fighting about? And because of
sometimes it's news. If something big happens, it's news, but most of the time it's just whatever's getting the most attention.
I actually got news several times a week by someone calling me on the phone and telling me something was going on, like as though I'm back in 1999. And that's how I actually got information. I used to get it on Twitter just by seeing what people are talking about. It's gone now. And the blue check, the new blue check system where you pay and then you monetize by engagement, it's incentivized is extremely negative social political commentary and poor standards and just what makes people the most mad. It's not good. It's actually not good for news or not good for being informed. It's kind of created like a psychological dog food environment, I would say. Just shoveling this crap constantly, and then so much of it, it's not good for you. It doesn't taste good. That's what they've done. And not to be so negative about it, it just makes me feel that there's an opportunity then to build something else. And the protocol aspect of it, the extent that can be popularized and people can understand what that means and how it disincentivizes that whole episode from being repeated is a great selling point. I think it's something that people could impress upon others that, you can still rebuild your social graph in somewhere else and you won't have to you can own it, which is really, really important, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And yes to crypto. Adrienne wants to know, wait, Adrienne, so I shouldn't use my AOL for everything. Actually, AOL was really, if I think about AOL and Warpcast and channels, they were onto something. AOL definitely helped you find things much easier within that one space. So
when the last week was
like news was there, like you could click on news, you could click on, I don't know. There you go. Maybe you choose AOL. But nobody's there anymore.
Everything old is new again.
Yeah, pretty much. And then we have MySpace coming via noun space. So there you go. It's all coming back.
Yes. And I found myself, Murtaza, going back to the New York Times recently. Like I really, not for everything. I kind of have pulled away for a number of reasons. Don't need to go into it. And I find myself not every article is great, but just yearning for just like a little bit more high quality, longer form.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was trying to escape. I was trying to escape the hegemony of like one or two news organizations. And that's what Twitter was so good at because it broke that down. But now, since that's not effective for that anymore, it's reinvigorated, just by default, people are going back to that. But I think that the open source kind of professional and distributed kind of way of disseminating news is far superior to that. So unfortunately, we're back to it, Adrienne, to New York Times. But I would like to not do that. I would like to leave that.
There will be alternatives.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the world is not
inevitable.
static.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How are we on 29 minutes of Farcaster news so far today?
Oh yeah, we're double that. But I do think we should wrap, because I know that Murtaza has to get going, and so does our regular audience, who's like, yeah, you guys never stick to that anyway. But I know you have some lightning round questions for Murtaza.
Yeah,
so
Murtaza, if you have a few more minutes.
Sure, yeah, I got some. Yeah.
I like to do a few lightning round questions. Don't overthink. These are not hard-hitting questions. We just like to get to know our guests a little better.
Yeah.
So I start with the first question I ask everybody. So if you're a friend of the show, you know what it is. But on Farcaster, we talk a lot about the URL to IRL pipeline, and lots of people here came onto Farcaster without knowing anyone and made a lot of internet friends that have become real friends in real life. So question to you is, when and how did you make your first internet friend?
I don't know. When did I first make an internet friend? Well, the thing is, over the years, because I mentioned earlier, I didn't go to journalism school, so I didn't know anyone who was a journalist. I was so remote from that world. Like, I could not be more remote from it. I was very, very far away from it. But then everyone somehow became my internet friend, because I started knowing people who were talking about the news and just responding to events on Twitter. And then those people became my colleagues after time. People I really admired, who just were much high above me, ended up becoming people I work with like on a daily basis, like even today. So it's even hard for me to understand where I can differentiate my internet friends from my real friends. I guess the ones I knew growing up were my just pre-internet friends before Facebook and Twitter and things like this were popularized or even developed. But now it's everyone. And I can't even remember the first one now. I can't even tell you who it is because but it's become everyone now, kind of.
Because you live in the metaverse officially.
I mean, my wife on the internet. Like everyone is kind of like from there. It's like I can't even differentiate the two worlds from one another, which shows the great, victory and penetration of that whole software into the world.
Yeah. All right. You can't count the channel you host, but what is your favorite other channel on Farcaster?
I like the memes channel, actually. I like to unwind with some memes, actually.
Many such cases.
What's your favorite holiday?
Holiday? I like Christmas, to be honest. I love Christmas. I just love the lights and the vibe and the music, and just everyone's so chill and it's kind of nice. I look forward to Christmas every year, and I'm liking the snow still. Like, it's less snow every year somehow, but just it's very beautiful. So yeah, definitely Christmas, I would say.
Morning person
Christmas
or night owl?
in New York is also so beautiful.
Oh, so beautiful in New York. It's amazing in New York. Yeah. I was always a night person, but lately I've become a morning person. So when you guys asked me to come on in the morning, maybe like 2 years ago, I was like, oh my God, 8:30. But now it's like, oh, I'm up at 7 o'clock anyways. It's fine. I'll just come.
We do that. We get this a lot. And to anyone else we ask to come on, we change the time for guests all the time. So if you want to sleep in, I invited Greg. Yeah. Like all our West Coast friends, we always do it later, but I invited Greg on one time, and he's on the East Coast, but he's like, I can't wake up that early. Like, we can do it later for you. Are you a completionist? Yes or no?
Yeah, I feel bad if I abandon something midway. Like, it's not that ever happens, but I would have to get like a teardrop tattoo for everything I've abandoned. Like, it's like really, I feel really bad if I did it. So yeah, I'm also like hyper focused on certain things until they're done, and then. I can't think of anything else.
What is a country you want to visit?
I went to Spain this year, so I've never been to Spain before. So yeah.
One of my favorite places to visit.
Yeah.
Concert or sporting event?
Depends on the sport, but I really enjoy concerts, so maybe it depends.
If you were to write a book, what would it be about?
I can't figure. I've been trying to have false starts to write books so many times, but now I'm thinking maybe writing a book about language learning, because I had a Substack post that people liked a lot about how to teach yourself a language, and I've done this a few times with different languages, and I think it's quite effective. And the books which currently exist, many of them are very good, but some I feel are dated based on the tools which you have at our availability today. So thinking a book of how to self-teach languages is something I'm considering at the moment.
How many languages do you speak?
I'll say 5. Yeah.
It's more than me. Football or soccer?
I've got a solid 1.
Well, I can't code, so it's a language I don't know. I wish I learned the Python or something. I'm very impressed people can do that. So yeah.
Okay, time out. when we say languages, if you are a coder, you are not allowed to count your coding languages as a language, okay? Because that is not fair. Okay. Football or soccer?
Soccer.
Camping or hotel?
Oh, if I'm by myself, camping. If it was my wife, then probably hotel.
Last thing you bought with crypto?
Like directly using crypto to buy something? I don't think I've always cashed it out to in the end. I don't think I've ever.
All right.
Yeah, as far as
We'll have to.
All right, we're gonna get you to the coffee shop.
Cafe.
Have you gotta get to the base cafe.
It can be digital. Have you bought an NFT?
I have bought an NFT. Yes, I have.
Right.
Oh,
okay. So you've paid with you've bought something.
I have actually. I have, right. Yeah.
Okay, that's it for lightning, and I know we got to get you go, but I actually had one more question. If you have 2 more minutes.
Yeah, I do.
So. And I like to end on a high note, but this is not. So you recently casted about the Pakistani military regime, Murtaza, and they were saying they were threatening to drop a bombshell leak exposing you and a colleague.
Yeah.
Your reaction was, I was actually planning to pivot away from covering the Pakistani government for a while, but they're really irritating me with these attacks, so I might just keep reporting on their criminal antics for a while longer.
Yeah.
I haven't formulated a question, but I think 99.9% of the people I know are going to stop. And so how do you have the courage to do what you do, and what are your feelings on that?
I'm going to share a link in the chat, which is just kind of very funny. It's kind of like, it's almost not funny, but it sort of is. But basically, last year, they released this fake audio call of me. I guess I was doing the stories about it's kind of complicated, but I have a source. We have sources inside the Pakistani military intelligence establishment. There's been a big political crisis there over the last year between the military and the civilian government. So many people are not happy about it. So they're leaking information to journalists, or mainly to me and my colleague, actually. It's kind of the people who have become the main conduits for it. But they released this fake audio call of me to try to disparage me, to say, here's him asking for money from his Indian intelligence handler. There's a rivalry between India and Pakistan. But if you play the voice, it's obviously not me. It's clearly a voice actor or something. They didn't even use AI to simulate my voice, which they could do. They just kind of had somebody, and I'm like, oh, well, when is the money coming? And, like something like that. So they're kind of trying to character assassinate me, but in this very inept way. So it becomes kind of funny. Now we have more stories.
When there's a need to blow off the heat, the door still.
Wow, that's wild. Wild.
So then the other guy sounds like Apu from The Simpsons. He's so over the top kind of voice, but I don't know. Like, I was gonna stop reporting on this because the heat's getting too much, but they're making me. I still have more things I can report, so I'll just keep reporting it then. But I've had many dangerous situations in jobs. I've had to go to Syria and Iraq and many other places which are dangerous, and people have mailed me white powder. A bullet came through my window one time. Like, all those things have happened, but I don't know.
Wow.
It's just like, other people have more danger. I'm very privileged. I have a Western passport. I live in New York. It's kind of like better for me than a lot of people I know who are my colleagues. But so I can't really complain. But there's an element of risk. And they did the bombshell they dropped is we had a source who were talking to him in Pakistan, and we've been texting with him, and they had arrested him, I guess, and maybe they tortured him. I don't know what happened, but they got his number and they got his messages. So they started posting our messages with him, but the messages were fine. They weren't anything. He was a spokesperson for a political party, so he used a lot of messaging to journalists. It's not a big deal. So that's what it was, and it's not very effective. But I'm sure they're going to try more things. They threatened to sue me recently too, so maybe they'll sue me. I don't know, but I'm confident it'll be fine because everything we report is truthful. But I don't know. I don't really consider myself courageous. I just think that I'm just doing my job. But it's there are risks in doing this. It's like I don't know. That's just the nature of it, and you have to just calculate and be as speak without fear or favor. That's kind of the motto behind it.
Yeah. Wow.
Well,
that's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. It's I think there's a lot of cowards in the world. Yeah. And we talk about the things, just in our life that I think of the kind of the dangers that I live in. I don't know. I just have a lot of respect for that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate the efforts and everything you do, and all the journalists out there that are seeking truth and go through the fear to report on it, especially those who are in war zones, all of that, just amazing. Like, but even if you're not in a war zone, even if you're not in a war zone, the war sometimes comes to you. So if you're getting bullets through your window,
it's hard to say something
Yeah.
which makes people mad too. Something which is true and make people mad, or maybe impacts you financially or something like that, or like, you know, politically. It's very difficult. That's even a hard thing to do. Moral courage is difficult. So that's also an aspect which I respect a lot with other people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone kind of loved that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And I do, you know, I think a lot of times we get a lot of criticism of media, and a lot of it is fair. I'll be honest, you know, in terms of mostly broadcast media in particular, but I think there's a lot of journalists out there who are doing the hard work, and people may not even realize that. So greatly appreciate everything you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the kind of big middle of people that you could try to attract to, those people who are not the 1%, the very large.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. And with that, we're going to call it. I'm going to attempt to do closing credits. It may not work. We might just say bye today. But I thank you so much for being here with us. We greatly appreciate it, Murtaza, and greatly appreciate you just diving into Warpcast and finding a little home there, a little corner, cozy corner. Love it's Drop Global News, correct? Is that your channel?
Yeah,
I'm trying
that's
to
the
remember
channel.
exactly.
Yeah.
Drop Global News. So drop into that channel if you want to stay informed with some serious like news coverage. That's where to jump into. Thank you, everybody who's been here. I was having issues getting on Lonely today, so sorry that chat has been a little quieter. Finally got in there. So thanks, everybody, no matter where you're watching. And we will see you Wednesday, usual time, 8:30 a.m. We'll see you then. Thank you again, Murtaza. And everybody have a lovely Monday. Bye-bye.